Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Front Door Show brought to you by Four Fantastic Events. I am your host, DJ Prieto, and today we have DJ Caveman. How you doing, sir?
What's up, man?
What's up, man? Thank you for doing the show for us.
Thanks for
Um,
inviting.
as I tell all my guests, do me a favor and give yourself a little intro. While you're doing that, I'll create the watch party and do the sharing and stuff like that. And you hopefully you can do the same. It's live on Four Fantastic Events business page. So definitely, if you Albert, can you give us a little intro for you?
All right. As far as a little intro, my name is El Caveman, or formerly, I used to use the name DJ Caveman, but I had to change it because there's just so many cavemans out there. But I started a long time ago. So I started like in the early 90s, probably like 91, 92 to be exact. So I've been DJing since that long. And I'm still doing it now, obviously for the love of it. And I just love, being before the quarantine, obviously, to DJ at festivals, at events, guest spots here and there. I don't even know where to begin as far as history. It's just, that I started in the early 90s by accident.
Okay, so that's okay. Let's take it from there. On
Okay.
accident. That's a first one on interview here.
Right.
How does someone start their career on accident?
My DJ career started by accident. The way that it started was that a buddy of mine at the time, his name was Edgar. We were both teenagers, and he happened to have like a cheap, you know, two cheap turntables. They were like the Techniques 100s. If you DJs might know what they are, they were like these. They were magnetic. They were silver, but they had like a little pitch slider. But anyway, they were old school beginner turntables. And then he had the realistic mixer. And I remember that, he would try to, learn how to DJ a little bit and stuff. So he had equipment at his house. So I was about like 14 years old or 15 years old. And I remember telling my buddy Edgar, I'm like, hey man, I really want to learn how to DJ. And then my buddy at the time, Edgar, he's like, you don't want to learn this stuff. You don't want to learn this stuff, blah, blah. You're not going to become a DJ and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, let me just try it, And I was like, I just liked how the equipment looked at the time. So then, I started playing with it and I'm like, wow, I really love this. I kind of want to have my own, DJ, equipment, gear, and start off DJing that way. So I was a teenager, and I remember at the time I got excited and I said, hey man, why don't we just record, my buddy Edgar? I was like, why don't we just record tapes, and sell them, at high school or something, or give them out or something, so we could get some recognition. And he at the time, my buddy Edgar was like, man, you're not a DJ. You're never gonna be a DJ. This is, you're crazy. You're crazy. That kind of thing. And so I really wanted to learn. I really wanted to become a DJ. So um, it was by accident that I ran into a buddy of mine, through another friend, and his name's Manny, and Manny Arroyo. And this guy lived in Bridgeport, old school DJ. If I was like 14 years old, he was like 35 or something. And he was like, you want to learn how to DJ? And I'm like, yeah, I do. And he's like, oh, well, I have these turntables. I have a turntable. I have the Technics 1200s. I have a Newmark mixer. Whenever you want to come by, come by. So that's how it started. So as a teenager, I was like 15 years old. I took the bus all the way from 26th Street all the way to his house in Bridgeport, so I could learn how to DJ. And so I started learning how to DJ, and then little by little, I started getting my own equipment, and I wanted to play at events. And it so happened that at the time, DJ Yayo was throwing events for Structure, or he was part of Structure, and he was throwing daytime events like in the early 90s, and then there was other events at Landale Hall. So anyway, I'm a kid. I'm like 15, 16, and I'm barely learning how to DJ.
What kind of music were you
In the early
mixing?
90s,
Yeah.
in the early 90s, it was techno. It was
Okay.
a lot of the James Brown is Dead, Who is Elvis,
Okay.
some of the hip house, but but not really. I think I was more like I wanted to play more of like the Who is Elvis stuff and James Brown, because at the time it was like 91, 92.
Right.
And
Okay.
I happened to meet Yayo at the time, and he was throwing a daytime party. And somehow or another, we got introduced, and then I don't I don't know how it came about where I was like, hey man, I would like to DJ at one of your house parties or something like that or an event. And he threw this house party in a basement, and he put me on the flyer. So that's kind of how it started. And you know, I had probably like a small crate of records, maybe like 20 records. That was my whole set. and and that was like my first opportunity to DJ somewhere like live.
You missed an important part.
Uh,
So you said your friend put you on the flyer. What name did he put you under?
well, at the time, I wanted the name Caveman, and I guess that's the yeah. I mean, I kind of skipped ahead a lot because
So,
the reason why I skipped ahead a lot is because you know I didn't know where to go chronologically, but the reason how I got the name Caveman was because it was a nickname, and this was in grammar school before I was even a DJ.
okay.
So that's why I have the DJ name Caveman. So the way that it happened was that I was in grammar school. I was like in fourth or third grade, and I hated going to barbers, you know, because my dad would take me to this Mexican barber in Little Village, and he would only cut like you know older men's hair, you know. So the way he would cut my hair, I didn't like how he would do it because he would make me look like an 1800 you know Mexican farmer or something, you know, with the alfalfa part like in the middle and stuff like that. So I tried to avoid haircuts. So my hair grew very long, and it went all the way to like my eyes when I used to have hair back then when I was a child.
When
And
all of us had hair.
so back then, my grammar school teacher told me in front of the whole class, said, your hair is growing so long. Why don't you cut your hair already? You look like a caveman. And then all the little kids started
Oh,
laughing.
forget it. That was it.
And that was it. Everybody called me caveman, caveman, caveman. And I hated that name at the time because they were making fun of me. But it just grew into my nickname. Now people in the neighborhood, because I grew up in Little Village, I went to Canoon Magnet Grammar School on Cermak and Kedzie. So around that neighborhood, everybody knew me as Caveman. So when I became a DJ or when I was learning how to DJ, I couldn't come up with a name, right? I was saying like, well, my real name's Armando. So what am I going to call myself? Armando, you know, Atom, Atomic, Atom Mixing, Hot Mixing. I didn't know what to come up with, right? I just didn't know what name I could come up with. And at the time, friends around me, they were like, why don't you just keep Caveman? You know, that sounds like a cool DJ name. And I was like, all right, let me keep Caveman, you know?
All right. So that's why I was like, wait a minute.
So I wish I could have planned these questions out beforehand, these
No, no,
answers.
no, no, no. But it's
But that's
interesting
why
story.
we're live, right? You know, that way it gives the spontaneity of the whole thing, and
Right.
you know, it's a lot more. It's not rehearsed.
Well,
But
then you've proven my point about the interview, and it's not rehearsed. It's all
yeah,
done live right now.
all live. We didn't plan it beforehand. He's asking me these questions cold, you know. So going back to that flyer, my first flyer that I was ever on was thanks to DJ Yayo at the time from Structure Entertainment. He threw a small basement party, and he's like, "Well, what name do I put on the flyer?" And then I was like, "Put my name, Caveman." And he's like, "Oh, Caveman, all right." And then that's it. That's just how it started. So that was like one of my first flyers. It was like a little paper flyer, and gosh, I don't even remember who was on the flyer. I mean, I know that Yayo was on there. I think back then the New Force Entertainment people were probably on there, like Victor Salazar, Notorious Nino, Carlos Feliciano. There
Was
was just the
was
other
this
DJs at the
a
time playing.
daytime party in the neighborhood there around where you lived at?
I think it was in Pilsen. I just don't
Okay.
remember the exact location, but I know it was a house party, and that's how it all started. So little by little, I started getting booked here and there, and I once I started getting booked here and there, just like small, you know, daytimes, because daytimes during when I was in high school were very popular because a lot of schools were throwing them, you know, and I went to Whitney Young High School, so we would throw our own daytime parties, even though I didn't DJ at any of the Whitney Young parties, but I DJed at a lot of like the Bogan parties or the Curie parties because I knew a lot of people from Curie at the time and from Bogan High School. So anyway, what really started the whole thing once I started DJing was that in the early 90s, I would listen to 90.5 WCYC back then, the radio station that is in Little Village for you guys that don't know.
Right, right.
And at the time in the early 90s, I remember hearing Gino Romo on or the other hosts on the Hot Mix show ask about if you want to submit a guest DJ cassette or a demo, please send it to the radio station 90.5 WCYC. So I started making tapes for WCYC and I submitted my first one and it got played. I didn't really know anybody working there at the time. I just remember I went to the station, I dropped it off to whoever worked there, and I said, hey, I want to submit a DJ mix for the Hot Mix show, for the Friday night Hot Mix show, and whoever took it was like, yeah, we'll give it to the person that is in charge of it. I just never met anybody there, but then it got played, right? So I was like, wow, I gotta turn in more mixes, you know? So then I made another mix and I happened to just go to the radio station. And then that's how I met first Sotero Gonzalez, Speedy G, that was one of the DJs that hosted Jam Session and part of the Hot Mix show on a Friday night at
Mhm.
WCYC. And then I met Gino Romo, Gino Rock and Romo at the time. And I remember back then he told me, hey man, thanks for submitting a mix. If you have any more, keep submitting it because I'm having a hard time getting DJs to submit one every week. And back then I was a teenager, so I was like, what? I'm like, I have an opportunity to turn in a mix for a radio station every single week. I'm like, yeah, I'm all on board. So I had plenty of time in my hands since I was a teenager back then, and so I just started submitting demos to the radio station, and then I was asked later on as I was turning in mixes, hey, why don't you become part of the radio station? All you got to do is just take some courses. And I'm like,
Right,
courses?
right. Is that with Val?
Yes, I think it was with at the time this was after Harv Roman from the radio station. It
Okay,
was another program director that we had at the time. His name was Chuck Wren,
okay.
and Chuck Wren had those classes. And then he's like, yeah, if you want to be part of the radio station, take classes, and you'll be part of the radio station. And I was like, oh, great. I'm like, now I have like an outlet to be able to play, my music, you know, in mass media, like at the time. I mean, the radio station was small, but it had a lot of listeners. And even though it had a small wattage, it was all people in Pilsen, Little Village, Cicero, Berwyn, all that area could catch it in a little bit of the Southwest side at the time. So yeah, that's how it all started. So once I started at the radio station, 90.5 WCYC, I was kind of blessed in to become part of the dominating six DJ team at the time as years went by. And then I was also a co-host for a radio show before the Hot Mix show on Friday nights at the radio station called Jam Session, and it was with Speedy G, and it was with J Rock Rodriguez, which was another DJ, and he also played for Boogie Tribe, which used to throw raves back then.
Right,
But
right.
so that show was Speedy G, J Rock, and myself, and that show was like from 7 to 9, I think, which was before the Hot Mix show. So it was perfect timing, and it had a lot of listeners because of that. So all we would do is we would just play like what is hot, what are the new tracks, and we would just bring our vinyl and we would play it or like requests, things like that. Of course, some old school, some retro
So,
stuff, but
so the stuff from 7 and 9 wasn't a mix show. It was just the hottest tracks, what was hot at that moment, right?
right. It was the
Okay.
hottest tracks, and then a lot of dedications and stuff like that. So shout outs. So yes, at the time it was basically me and J Rock bringing our vinyl and then saying, okay, this is new. This is a new track by Paul Johnson, or this is a new track by DJ Sneak or CZR or DJ Jess. So it was our way to break in new music because even at the time I always wanted to push for new music. Old school is
Right.
great. I love retro, but I kind of felt that we had an avenue to play some of the newer stuff that is not being played at the major radio stations like B96 at the time and
Right.
other commercial radio stations. So it kind of gave us that avenue. So the jam session was just a show where we just play just songs, and it was just a 2-hour time slot. And it was before the Hot Mix Show. Then the Hot Mix Show featured all the guest DJs and the Dominating Six DJ team.
Right.
So from there, then I guess from the early 90s, middle 90s, then the radio station did help me because then at the time I started getting bookings at other clubs, other events at the time. A lot of the events that were being thrown like at Orbit, Rama, Village Cafe. Um, wow, I mean, there's just so many to name, but there were guest spots. They weren't like they weren't residencies. And at the time, it's just that it happened so that because I was a resident at the radio station, I was kind of reluctant to do like a full residency at a club like every week, because then I kind of felt at the time that I might miss out on other one-time events that are, big events like a guest DJ event at House of Blues, for example, or, like, Black Wednesday or something, like something that I always try to work with other different promoters and just to do like get guest DJ spots at the time. And as I got old, as time was going by, then I went to college. I was in undergrad, and then I went to law school. So I didn't have the time to work, be at the radio station, be a resident DJ, and still have time to study.
Right.
So that's why I kind of kept my bookings just guest DJ spots.
Right.
And so as far as that goes, that's how a lot of the middle 90s, it was just getting booked at a lot of these one-time events, these guest DJ events. Lawndale Hall, I remember back in the early 90s, I would play there. um I mean, it was just so many to name. I think in the north side there was Centrum, I think.
Yep. Exactly.
um Alcatraz, I would play at Alcatraz a lot, even though it was I don't know if I could say this because time passed so so many years ago, but I was spinning at Alcatraz as a guest DJ, and Al Cisneros let me, and I was underage at the time, but he let me play it at
And everybody's played underage. I don't think that, I don't think if we were doing it by the books, I don't think any of us would have been, been who we are today, honestly.
right.
Because, and I'll give you, for instance, one of the biggest DJ, Metro, he was 15 or 16 years old, and we had him DJ at 720, and he
Mhm.
clearly was underage and stuff like that. And but the cool thing is his mom and dad came with him,
Oh,
and and that was a big part of it. Mom and dad are coming with you, so there was an understanding when it wasn't at Tunney, but it was Mike when his mom and dad came by, and I knew his mom and dad, and I said, I kind of said, no, the guy's really good. Everybody, all the guys, Aura and everybody, Gonzo had said, hey man, this guy's really good. And he said, besides, his parents are here to make sure that, and I says, well, if your parents are bringing you to the club, they're expecting you to be, they're care about, so if a parent brings you to the club, my God, please, because all you're going to do is DJ and then you're going to leave, right? That's what else going to happen.
right.
So people underage, I know that maybe extremes for some people, but I think that there's a lot of talent out there, and just because we're in the 21 and over, and I get it why we have those rules. I don't know if you hear my story that I used to have a separate door. I used to go in the DJ booth,
Oh,
so
wow.
and that was how we got away with it. I
Oh,
never
nice.
literally walked into the club. I had a
Uh,
door with a key, and I would walk upstairs, and that was our technical excuse of how I got up there. But trust me, I walked into the front door and I went upstairs, but I didn't hang out in the bar. or hang out
Yeah.
at the club. I stayed in the DJ booth, and and that was a long night from 9 o'clock until 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning. So
Oh my goodness.
obviously, I have to use the bathroom, at least twice in the night, and
Oh,
I
wow.
would go, but they all knew that I didn't touch alcohol, didn't touch any drinks or anything like that. But for anybody that's underage, if you're playing like at Alcatraz, I'm sure Al, what am I gonna do? The guy's talented DJ. Now, if somebody's got to vouch for you too, so I'm sure
Right.
that that's got to be like, all right, it's on you.
Right.
If he
Right.
messes up, it's on you. So
Right. And I think back then, I think Alcatraz hosted a couple of DJ battles from high school.
right.
And I think that was one way that I remember I met, I think Rick Torres was one of the first promoters at Alcatraz to book me at the time, I think. And then that's how I met Al Cisneros. But I was underage at the time, and then and I think there were a couple of high school DJ battles. I was in one of them, but unfortunately, it was during the Bulls championship game. I think it was like the last game or something. So there was nobody there. There was like nobody at that DJ battle. I mean, it was just a handful of us DJs. The crowd there's like no crowd whatsoever. And it was because, the Bulls championship. I think it was the first Bulls championship where like the fans went all crazy, and I think they tipped over a school bus or something like that. I don't remember. But yeah, there was, that DJ battle. I remember there was nobody there. It was to the point that, I either it was Al or the other promoters that were saying, well, we don't really know how to judge who won the battle because there's
There's
really
nobody
nobody.
there to judge it.
And so yeah, so I did have some memories of Alcatraz, and I remember doing a few guest spots there, and just one of the handful of clubs where I would just do like guest DJ spots, and probably like once a month events. But I never really did the residency thing. I only did the residency thing, I guess, at the radio station for 90.5 WCYC. For like
Uh-huh.
4 years, I was on the radio station. And then after that, I think in the late 90s, I became a resident DJ at WCRX 88.1 FM. And I
Okay.
think I was there for another 4 years. So I would like give them mixes for like the mix at 6 and other hosts that had like their the Friday night, also the Friday night hot mix party that they had. So sometimes we would mix live there. I think at the
So
time it was Jamie, Jack and Larson
right,
hosting.
I remember Jamie. Well, a question for you, and so I'm gonna ask you a question like I'm totally ignorant, or just people who might be. CRX, did it have a bigger range than CYC? Was it what was it? College station? What exactly was CRX?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question because I kind of need more leading questions so I could fully explain all these things. 88.1 WCRX was a Columbia College radio station.
Okay,
So Columbia College is located in downtown Chicago, and they did have more wattage than WCYC 90.5, but my take on it was that I guess where the signal was coming from was from downtown Chicago. So although it had more wattage, I think it like reached more of the north side, more of the loop area. But the so they did have a listenership, but I think that Little Village, because of that area and where the WCYC was located, I think just those areas are more populated as far as like residential homes. Whereas like at 88.1 WCRX, since it's downtown, you really don't have like people living there. It's mostly office buildings, government offices, that sort of thing. So yeah, 88.1 did have more wattage, I think. And they did have a wide listenership too. But I think that 90.5 WCYC, because of that area and how it was concentrated as far as Little Village, Pilsen, Cicero, Berwyn. That's why they had, surprisingly, the amount of listenerships that they had.
Mm-hmm.
which at the time I'm surprised, because they had a very low wattage.
Well, I think if you want to do the mathematics of it,
Mhm.
90.5 is not that far off the end of the dial. 88.1 is like the
Right.
last station.
At the end, yeah, yeah.
So, and if I'm not mistaken, that was the whole thing, is that 90.5 was a lot easier to like capture right away. Whereas the 88.1, you would have to kind of like, okay, I think I hear it, here it is,
Right,
and that's what would happen. And
right,
because it was so far to the left, I think that's where everybody kind of like, kind of even forgot about it, because it
right.
was so far to the left of the dial. Whereas 90.5, or 96, and then you got
Mhm.
101, you got all the stations that are in between there. And
Right.
if and I remember 80 88.1, it was like there was a lot of, if I'm not mistaken, they had other programs that weren't strictly music. It was all other stuff that was going on at the same time. If I remember,
Right.
because I would tune in there and it would be something Polish, something different. It
Mhm.
wasn't nothing music at all. And I
Yes.
think I think we and I think I would like, and then you kind of forget about it. But if you went to 90.5, there was music. Always happening
Right.
somewhere in the dial.
Right. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I didn't. Yeah, that's a good point because I never looked at it that way. But yeah, you're right. Because since it's a college radio station, it's supposed to be educational. So you're gonna have a lot of different programs that are not really music related, more like podcast type of deal, or it might be different type of music. Whereas I guess 90.5 at the time, it was kind of more geared towards Spanish listeners, Spanish music or Spanish language listeners, and then at the
Right,
same time
right.
English. But that's where the DJs would come in, and with the house music, with the alternative, with the freestyle, with the old school. And then I guess that's
Well,
that's why we had that.
I'll give you a perfect example. That the aspect of 88.1, as opposed to Latin station on AM. When they were trying to do a Latin state, when they were doing Latin music and stuff like that, when they said, "Oh yeah, we're gonna do it on AM station," who listened to AM? I mean, honestly, it would they would, and I would tell everybody, I go, dude, there's no Latin radio station in Chicago. There was, but who wants to listen to AM radio station? It would it
Right,
would it would get lost. And
right.
just say, and ironically, tomorrow I have one of my DJs, DJ Cubanito from Texas. But we always talk about that because we were always at the Winter Music Conference, and we
Oh,
talk.
I love the music. The WMC. Yes.
Yeah. And we talk. And I was involved in. I was part of the Latin panel as well. And one of the things we always talked about is how the the people finding things by accident.
Mhm.
That's and
Yeah.
and that's kind of what you said about DJ and an accident is that Al Cisneros says that his things became successful on accident. And I think a lot more times, if you're given chances of things happening on accident, there are more chances of being successful on purpose. If you
Right,
understand what I mean. So
right,
like that's why I'm saying about the station being at way over there, 88.1. And if by accident you turn
right,
it all the way over, you might hear it. Whereas on 90.5, you will hear it on purpose because you're looking for it right then and there.
right,
Definitely, you're not going to treat. I mean, you're going to hit your button on AM on accident, maybe.
right, right. It's true. I mean, I never thought about it like that, but you're right because it was all the way to the other side of the dial. And speaking of accident, um, before I even DJ'd, as far as house music, I ran into it by accident. No pun intended, or I'm not, exaggerating about the thing, but it really happened by accident because I was a little kid. This was like, middle 80s or whatever, 86. And I was just, or 85, and I was like, just, looking through the dial and stuff and just, trying to search something that I like, and I was a weird kid because I wasn't outside playing in the summer with other kids in the neighborhood. For some reason on Friday night, I would just try to listen to to the hot mix show at WBMX because I ran into it by accident. I remember I was like with my boombox, just searching until I found something I liked, and I'm like, wow, this is kind of cool. Let me listen to it. And I had like a bag of candies, and I would just be eating candy, and then I was like, wow. And then I would just hear the drops, Ralphie, the Raz, Rosario, and I was like, what? Who is this guy? Wow, this kind of cool. I like this music. And then I started getting little tapes and started recording them. So I would listen to WBMX back then. It was by accident because I was just, going through the dial, and that's how I liked house music. And I'm like, what am I
And
listening
and
to?
and there you prove my point.
So, so it did purely by accident until years
Wow.
later. Then, again, another accident that, I happened to be playing on turntables and I liked it. And who knew that I was going to pursue that, because at the time, I mean, if you really look at it, if you're a teenager, it's expensive. You have to buy two turntables. At the time, they were like 450 a piece. You had to buy a decent mixer, which was another couple $100. You had to buy vinyl. If you buy like, and sometimes you needed
Oh
two
God,
vinyl,
if
two
if we
copies.
if we look at all the cost, it cost us up to, oh my God, I think we could have bought three houses easily.
Yeah, easily. And especially back then, if we wanted like an import record, that's like, $10. You get
Doubles.
double 20, a double pack, triple pack, forget about it. I mean, then as a teenager, you don't really have money. So you're like, you're trying to do what you can. So, I mean, now obviously it's different because now, if you're a teenager, you want to become a DJ, you just buy a laptop and you download somebody's library, or
Right,
you
right.
download, a couple of tracks for 99 cents each, so the cost, obviously makes it more conducive for people to be DJs now than back in the 80s or 90s because we had to buy the actual vinyl, which was
So,
expensive.
so you said you started in techno. So what was the music you were playing once you started on the radio and started playing these? What was your
Well,
format?
that's a good question. That's a very good question. Well, during the time, as far as like the early 90s, I would play techno because that was like the in thing at the time. Like I think 90, 92, 93. Then it kind of started, you know, getting played out. Not too many, promoters would book people that played just techno. So, and then since I came to the radio station 90.5 WCYC, I've noticed that it was a multi-genre type of radio station where the listeners wanted to hear house music, they wanted to hear freestyle, they wanted to hear different types of genres, alternative. So then little by little I started buying other music. So, obviously since I started off house or loved house music, that's where I went to. So in other words, once techno started kind of losing its edge in like 92, 93, then I started like playing a lot of the house music, a lot of the house music tracks, that were coming out at the time. And of course I would get also old school records. And circling back, um, the way that because I was at the radio station, there was a big demand of playing like 80s music, 80s retro, high energy, or the old house cuts from like the 80s. So the guy that taught me how to DJ, his name is Manny Arroyo, the guy that I was telling you about earlier in this interview. Um, he had all these old school records, and he
So
would let me
what
borrow them.
was, I know you mentioned his name already twice before, but what was his DJ name?
He wasn't like a very well known DJ,
Okay,
so we just called him DJ Manny at the
okay,
time.
all right, all right.
And he was from Bridgeport. He wasn't really like a DJ that was on a lot of flyers or anything like that. It was just an older gentleman that had turntables at his house, and remarkably, he was a very good DJ, like technical wise. He was a good DJ and he could blend and everything, but um, so he wasn't really like on flyers, but he just happened to have records and he happened to have DJ equipment, and he would let me DJ at his house, and we became friends. So at the time, he would lend me these records, or he would tell me, hey, you could come to my house, record it here, and it's cool. And I was like, I'm a teenager, he's like 35, 34. His wife is there, his kids are there, and I was kind of like, oh man, I feel awkward, like I don't want to intrude in your personal space. So he would just lend me these records. He would lend me like the old high energy records because although I grew up around those days, I wasn't, I was a little kid, like in 85, 86. So, I didn't DJ on those records. So I would just take those records home, practice, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna make a mix for WCYC 90.5, and I'm gonna do a high energy mix, or I'm gonna do a classic mix. And then I would borrow his old records, and that's how I had that background of old school. And of course, as I got older, I started buying started collecting all different types of genres, but mostly, my I guess my influence was more house based. I kind of played more of the house music during the middle '90s, and then I started kind of like in the late '90s. I kind of was trying to. I was trying to play it in the rave scene. I kind of wanted to play stuff that was not too commercial. Like I didn't want to play stuff that was too familiar. I kind of wanted to play underground stuff. So then
Okay.
at the time I would I would get booked like here and there to play for Boogie Tribe. And then like in the late '90s I started gearing more towards like the more of the underground crowd. And at the time I met a producer from Casual Records, Lester Fitzpatrick, in the late '90s, or like '98 or so. And we developed a friendship. And he's like, "Hey man, if you want to learn how to make tracks, I can teach you." And I was like, "Really? Wow, that's that's very generous of you." And then I started hanging around with Lester Fitzpatrick from Relief Records, from Casual Records, and he had an MPC 2000, and he would make, which is a drum machine, and he would make tracks on that. And he he would teach me how to make beats. This is like '99, '98, and so I wanted to go into that genre, that crowd. I kind of wanted to play more for the, not too much for the commercial scene, but more for like, I kind of wanted to be more around like that type of environment, like the DJ Sneaks at the time, the Lester Fitzpatrick, people around that, Robert Armani. So I started hanging around with a lot of those guys, and we would go like to raves all the way in like Wisconsin somewhere, and we would take these like road trips, and sometimes Lester Fitzpatrick would get booked over there. He would just bring me along, and then he would say, "Hey man, do you want to spin with me?" And I'm like, "Dude, I don't think that's proper. They booked you." He's like, "Nah, don't worry about it, man. We'll tag team and we'll DJ up there." And I was like, and sometimes that's how it went. I went to some of these raves and I would just do an impromptu, set with Lester Fitzpatrick, or with, Robert Armani, but more with Lester Fitzpatrick, and that's kind of how it started. So, with through Lester Fitzpatrick, he kind of he was kind of the motivator that got me to work on music, to produce tracks, and to start making beats. And then that's how, I guess, that part of my DJ career went. As far as like, then I wanted to make tracks,
Okay.
and he was one of the first influences.
So what year was this exactly, was that you were with?
Right, probably like late '90s, 98 to like probably
Okay.
like 2001. And then that's when then I started going to the WMC, and try to meet people out there and try to see how the scene was. And I think in the late '90s to the early 2000s was one of the best times for the Winter Music Conference in Miami. I mean, there was just it things were more accessible back then, kind of, in a way, but also those events were like very big events. You could walk into a Masters at Work party, or a Subliminal Records party, or a
Mhm.
Naked Music party, and it was just a lot of
I was at all of them.
yeah,
I was there.
exactly. So the experience, the environment. I mean, it's a very, very awesome environment. And I'm glad that they're still doing it, from what I heard.
Right.
I mean, but I think this year it just, because of the whole COVID and the pandemic, then it just didn't go through. But I think they were trying to revive that, um and get it to where it was.
Well, I think what I had heard, that a lot of people stopped going, and then and just talking, one of my friends, Marshall, he was telling me about it. He was, because I stopped going, and I because I was focusing on the Latin, I went into the Billboard conference instead.
That's right.
But I think the last time I went was in 2006. I think
Oh
that was
wow.
the last time I was there in 2006. But I was there for 18 years. I went there for all 18 years, and
Wow.
I I remember when I stopped going, they had told me like probably in 2011 that it kind of fell off in a sense
Mhm.
because it became just a party, and the
Right.
Ultra Fest was going on, and it was like, and that was happening kind of simultaneously.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it was a major concern for them, because it kind of fell off of that whole what it was. And honestly, Winter Music Conference was always a great, when it came to networking and to great, the connections, and I made tons of connections, and I made, oh my God, it's and did a little producing here and there and stuff like that as well. Not to the point where I was, I was, did two songs, and that was it. I was like, okay, my drive was gone. It's like it was,
Okay.
I didn't want to do it anymore. Um,
Okay.
it just was not my process, and obviously in my chapters I went different directions. But I know for you guys, I mean, for record producing, I used to see up there Sneak, used to see CZR up there, and Jess and all the guys, and
Right. Right.
and and especially when you come up with a new song, you're having every DJ play. You want every DJ to have it and every DJ to play it, and
Right.
you know
Right.
at the time, I think that's when CDs were starting to come out as part of a, not so much as vinyl, but it was like CDs. You're giving out the CDs.
Right.
That-
That was your demo back then.
right, right. That was it.
Because we couldn't press vinyl on our own, so it was like CDs. But now that you mentioned the producing thing, I'll tell you an interesting story of what happened to me when I was barely starting to produce in like 99, 98. Well, what happened was that I did this one track, I produced this one track, and I was like, I'm gonna submit it to Underground Construction. I didn't know anybody from underground construction other than like CZR and Bear Who and people like that, but I didn't really know anybody inside of underground construction's records. So it just so happened that I'm like, look, man, I'm just gonna turn in this demo to whoever the A&R is or whoever the owner is, and so I head over to underground construction, and it was like a little factory almost. I was kind of impressed with the whole setup. And so I meet the owner at the time. His name is DJ Attack, and you know, and I remember that. Well, I don't really remember his first and last name that well, so don't. So whoever so correct me. Whoever's on out here, correct me like his real name. I think his name was Andy Adams. Anyway, rest in peace. He passed away, but before he passed away, I remember I submitted a demo to him, and it was one track on a DAT machine. And it was kind of like a Latin house type of track. And again, my influence has always been Latin house because I just love that sound. But anyway, this is 1999, so I submitted a house track to him that had like a Latin flavor to it. And so he listens to it, and he tells me, hey, I like this track and I want to put it out on my label. And I was like, oh my God, I'm over here like, late early 20s or something. And I was like, wow, my track is going to be accepted on underground construction and after hours or whatever the sub labels were. And I was like, yes, and then, he's like, I like this track. I want to put it out, but just give me 3 more tracks because I can't put out your track, just one track. You got to give me 2 or 3 or something so I could make an EP out of it. So I'm like, all right, okay, I'll start working on it. Well, I started working on it, and the fall semester started for law school because, I went to law school. So I was working full time, going to law school. So I couldn't complete these tracks. So because I didn't complete these tracks, time passed by, and then he died. Once he passed away. So after he passed away, there was nobody else I can follow up the project with or for them to put out tracks because I really don't remember what is the cause of death was. I think it was, but point is that he passed away. So that was, so my opportunity to be on that record label was gone. And then as far as that label goes, and after his death, obviously, then I think the business wound down, and then they just closed shop and stuff.
Right.
But after that, I just didn't pursue any more that project than anywhere else. And then I just went full time to law school, and then so like 4 years, 3.5 years, 4 years of law school. So I kind of, my production stopped. I stopped producing because I was in law school. I was working full time, and at the same time I was in law school. So I was studying. I was studying until the wee hours of the night, and then I would DJ.
Different chapter of your life.
Right, right. It's like my chapter at my life at the time was like, hey, I gotta get through this law school thing, because at the time, why law school? Well, because at the time I kind of never thought that DJing, was gonna be my full-time career. I thought that I would like it to be, but I was like, well, I think that if I just go the safer route and go get my law degree and become an attorney, and then kind of have a career where I can still pay my bills, but at the same time I can work on music, and I could do DJing and music that I really love, but just I guess on the side, not really like my full time kind of thing. So that's why I guess during that time, my production was at a halt. I was more like, okay, well, I'll do guest DJ spots here and there, but let me get through law school first.
Right.
And then came the what do you call it? The bar exam. So the bar exam is not like any regular test that you're gonna take. I mean, you got to study like 12 hours a day, like for 2 months, and like every single day. So 10, 12
So even
hours.
guest spotting was out of the question.
Yeah, that that the summer when I took the bar, I had no gigs, like no gigs whatsoever. I just lived in the house, went to my little practice courses, and just studied for the bar, and then that was it. But I mean, so then after graduation, after the bar exam, then I was like, okay, now it's like the mid 2000s. So I'm like, all right, now I want to DJ again. Now I want to play at events again. And then I started getting booked again and doing more events and doing more events, and then getting back into producing, which kind of took a while, but I started getting back into my passion, whereas like when I was in law school, I kind of was doing it more. I was still DJing, but I wasn't putting in like as much time as I could have when where I could pre-law school. So I had kind of less time. So I would kind of just do guest DJ spots. And at the time it was kind of like the twilight years of 88.1, my residency there. I would just do mixes, but it was like once a week. Uh, I still don't know how I did it, because I still made a mix for WCRX every week, which was like a 1 hour mix, I think, for the mix at 6, or half an hour. I don't know. But anyway, like every week I would have to make one. And then I had a full-time job. At the same time, I was in law school, so how I how I did it, I don't know. I guess I was younger back then, so, and I just was passionate about it, that I was like, well, I don't want to, leave DJing or leave music. I still want to be part of it, but I'm
You
just
don't want to
gonna,
leave any aspect out. You just want
right.
to,
I didn't want to leave any aspect out, so I try to balance.
right.
But
So,
yeah. So, oh, even before the whole law school thing, I put out my first mixtape in like '97 or so, and it was called the Lost Mix. So it was like a JPEG, with the Jurassic Park logo, but instead of the dinosaur, it was like a shadow of me. And so it was a techno mix at the time. So it was a lot of like the Daft Punk stuff, a lot of Hyperactive, a lot of Josh Wink, a lot of Richie Hawtin, Plastic Man, stuff like that type of
okay.
music. Some of the CZR stuff, and it was successful. I mean, I remember I sold out my. I think I pressed like 1,000 units, and I sold out 1,000 units, and this was pre-law school, so that was another aspect of it, that selling a tape is very time consuming. You had to go to different stores and kind of had to drop off a couple here, drop off a couple of there, see how many sold. I went to Hot Jams. I went to the mix shop, and I think mix shop had something in Fort City and one in North Riverside, correct?
Right, correct. The kiosks that they had there.
Right. Even Jumpin' Music had some of my mixes, believe it or not. And I even went all the way to the north side to sell them. I think I remember even the flea market. I dropped a couple of there. I think
So did
one
you have
time.
your little receipt book with you? Does that
Yes, I had those old school ones because a lot of them they did it by consignment. Consignment meaning that we're not going to pay you until your tapes sell, and then we give you a
right?
cut of whatever. And but some sellers, especially in the South Side, they would just give me the money straight out. They would say, okay, well, I'll give you $4 for each tape or something, and give me 50 units. And I even had mixes at I think at Brickyard Mall. Who's that?
Sarge, Sarge,
Yes, yes,
Saragon.
yes, yes, yes. So
Yes.
I had tapes over there, and I remember it was so time consuming because I had to drive at all these places, go back and forth, make sure that I had to restock, make sure that you know, for me to collect my money because sometimes you would go and sometimes they tell you, hey man, I don't have your money yet. Come back next
So
week.
so
or
Armand, so you don't remember me at the Saragon spot? Um, so just to let you know,
uh-huh.
um, he hired me to work there.
Really?
And the reason why, because my product was okay. First of all, DJ Prieto mixtape CDs, right?
Mhm.
My picture wasn't on there, so nobody knew it was me. But he was selling. I think he was selling like 1,000 units a week with me. That's what he was selling
Wow.
out of that.
That's
Out of that.
impressive, man.
So, and two DJs, but were selling about 1,000 a week. It was me and DJ Funk.
Uh-huh.
That was basically it. And he had me working there. I believe it was Monday to Wednesday. I was working there on Monday to Wednesday. Sometimes he would have me work there on Sunday.
Mhm.
But I was working for him on Monday. It's like I literally I would open up the shop for him, and then
Mhm.
and then DJs, a lot of DJs would come by and they're looking for Sarge, and
Uh-huh.
I was working there, and it was funny to me because it was nobody knew it, but as people walked up to there, what's the hottest tape? And I go, well, what do you want, English or Spanish? And obviously someone said English. I go, okay, you want house or hip hop, or you want, and then I would say, okay, here. I said, these are the two biggest sellers, the DJ Funk and DJ Prieto. Those are the two biggest sellers. And I go,
Uh-huh.
and then I says, but this is the new one that came in, and then we would talk about the new one coming in, and I would grab, and generally I would sell maybe 3 to 4. And he liked that. He knew I was a salesman. He liked that. I wasn't only selling mine and DJ Funk, I was selling other tapes. I go, yeah, well, here, this is another style. This is another style. Hey, you want something? Hey, this is good. This is good. And and obviously I would hear the mixes. And so
Right.
I would critique them too. So I would be like, oh man, this is good, man.
It's like
This
this
is
guy's
really,
making me money.
I was like, and I would, if I would hear the mixes, then I would be like, yeah, this is going to be this is a good tape.
Mhm.
And generally that's what would happen, especially if like when the DJ would come by, I didn't know who it was because how many DJs were selling mixtapes? God, thousands of people.
Right.
Guys would come in, oh yeah, I'm DJ, blah, 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 I have a mixtape. And I would tell them, hey man, just let you know, man, this is a really good mixtape. I says, I should know, I'm DJ Prieto. And people were like, what? Yeah, I'm DJ Prieto. Oh my God. Yeah, because I got pretty well known at selling the
Well,
mixtapes.
back then we wouldn't put pictures on flyers, I mean, that's
Right.
that's what I liked about that era because, it was kind of like a surprise, it's like we didn't really put pictures of ourselves. I mean, now with social media, you see all the flyers and you see pictures of DJs, but back then we just put our names and that was it.
Well, I
So
don't think
they were like,
anybody. Okay, do me a favor. I'll kind of stand up a little bit because I want to see the front of your shirt. What is it? What is that? Okay. So I was gonna say, so if somebody's seen you walking into the store and seeing now I'm DJ Caveman dressed like that.
Right, then they'll know. You know, if not, then they wouldn't know because we didn't have,
Right,
we didn't have pictures on the on our flyers back then. I think probably the logistics because you would have to take pictures of them, give it to the
correct, correct.
panel printing, and then
Yep.
panel printing would have to print them, and align them. So I think back then it was just a lot more. The logistics just made it a little bit more cumbersome. But
Right. That's why I said just the namesake.
right. And so yeah, so going back to the whole tape industry, I was successful with my first tape, which I was a little surprised because I kind of did a non-commercial techno mix, like at the time. So I was playing like a lot of the newer stuff that was out at the time. So if it was Josh Wink or it was, Spastic, or if it was even Daft Punk was kind of new at the time. I mean, us the DJs knew who Daft Punk was, but like the general public, wasn't like blasting, like rolling and scratching or something, from Daft Punk. So I was kind of surprised at my first release, and I remember that at the time the reason why I didn't follow up and kept doing other tapes, I kind of regret not doing them. But at the time, again, law school kind of I
It's a
couldn't
lot
do
of work.
everything.
It's a lot. It was a lot of work, man. It
It
was a
was a
lot
lot
of.
of work. It's a full time job, to sell tapes. I mean,
Oh,
because you had to really be on it.
I was working full time and I quit my full time to do this to mix to
Yeah,
because but but I also was smart enough to know that hey, wait a minute, I'm selling this many pieces. How much am I making on a mixtape? How much am I making at work? And honestly, it was a great choice for me because I was making more money on the mixtape business than I was doing
yeah,
on my regular job, and obviously for the purpose of what I was doing as far as
right. Because you were following your passion. Yeah.
right,
And that's the
exactly.
thing, like that's one of my regrets because a lot of people say you shouldn't have regrets in life. You should kind of look at it as a learning experience, but no, part of me I feel that I do regret that. I regret that I didn't keep putting out tapes because the tape market really helped you, because money wise and I guess
Well, it had its moment.
yeah, it had its moments
Yeah,
until
because obviously because I think it was like I want to say it was 6 years, 7 years later. Then here comes Napster, and then the
yeah,
downloads, and that changed the
yeah.
whole game. And then here comes the RIA busting
Yeah.
everybody. So
Oh, yeah.
it changed everything. It
It
just
changed
changed the
the dynamic of everything,
yeah,
because it changed the dynamic of everything. And that's why I regret it. I do regret that I didn't take advantage of the time when I could have. I could have made these tapes a lot earlier. I could have just rolled with it until, yeah, I couldn't do it until Napster came along. And, but hey, things happen for a reason. And that's
yep,
just part of everybody's journey.
yep.
And which the whole Napster thing has fascinated me a lot because that was a lot of the main reasons why I became an attorney because I wanted to learn more about copyright. I
Okay, I
kind of
was
wanted
gonna
to
say
learn more about trademark. And I remember at the time when the Napster decision came down, I was very pissed because I was like, as a law student at the time, now that I kind of understood copyright law and copyright uh, infringement back then, I was very upset about it because I'm like, look, what Napster is doing is not a bad thing. This is me as a student speaking back then,
right.
because Napster was kind of the analogy that I had back then, or that a lot of the pro Napster people were saying was like, look, Napster is not giving stuff for free. It's more of a peer to peer type of network. So if you have a vast DJ library with your MP3s and I have them, I can it's kind of like if I buy a CD, I can sell you the CD that I bought. That's the first sale doctrine. I could do whatever I want to with that copy. I could share it with somebody else and I could get it, the other way, but the way that I guess the arguments was that Napster was basically stealing that the people were stealing the music, which I don't really think it was really that. It was more, I mean, now, 17 years later, we kind of know that, okay, well, it's more of a royalties thing. It's just that these artists weren't paid their royalties and these record labels weren't paid royalties. But, at the time I was thinking as a DJ only, because
Well, there that time, since you mentioned that, I remember that was part of the discussion at the Winter Music Conference.
Mhm.
And pretty much everybody knew what I was doing as far as mixtapes. Nobody, it was no secret to, and and let me tell you something, I didn't hide it either. Never hid anything, how the success of it. I didn't, I wasn't in my basement, producing a million copies and stuff like that. No, it wasn't like that. But I was out of the trunk of my car and we were doing well. And when I went to the Winter Music Conference, I remember that was my discussion with the heads of labels, and I said, "Listen," and especially because I was doing more of the Latin aspect of it, and more so because I would have this argument with the Latin labels, and then we'd talk about the dance music aspect of it. I go, look at the exposure dance music has got because of mixtapes. Look at the exposure that's happened because of the fact that this music is being played in front of 100,000 people. Let's face it. If a DJ was at the Winter Music Conference and we had Frankie Knuckles DJing, there's 100,000 people coming out to see him and stuff like that, right? But I go, if they put up, let's say DJ Prieto, you're lucky if there's 100 people that are coming to see, but I says, but the reason why there's 100,000 people seeing this house DJ, because the industry, the culture of it is as you said, the peer aspect of it is more, the camaraderie is bigger. There's more reaches out there with that music. And I go, you guys, and I used to say, you Latin labels have to learn from the dance track labels, because if you don't, you guys are going to fall apart. You guys are going to start one by one. And sure enough, that's what happened. That's exactly what happened. And and then I mean, trust me, there was a point where there was a time when the Recording Industry Association came up to me, talked to me, and we had the big discussion. We had a very good discussion about it, and and I understood exactly well. I understand. I says, okay, you know what? Won't touch any mixtapes and CDs no more. That's it. It's done. But then what was crazy is that I went up to all the record labels and said, listen, if this is how many pieces I've sold on my own without this sold, because and the reach I was able to get worldwide, I go, don't you think you as a label wouldn't pay attention to that? There's a worldwide reach and you guys aren't doing it. I did it on my own, and I have no worldwide affiliation to nothing. But it just, sometimes these people in the labels, and sometimes the people, they look at it like this. They're very television. They don't look at it. And
the other thing too is the age gap and the generational gap, because and the reason why I bring this up is because copyright law is very archaic. So you have a lot of people that are in their 50s and 60s that are making decisions about copyright law. So they don't have that access to the youth, or they're not in the industry where they kind of understand what DJing is or whatever it is. Because when I was in law school, I'm over here like listening to these lectures, and I'm like on copyright law, and I'm like, wow, you guys don't understand the concept of DJing. DJing would, the way the old school copyright professors would look at it is if you DJ and if you make a mix, that mix of other tracks that you played, to them is like copyright infringement if you didn't get permission from the original copyright holder, which is the record label. And back then I was like, you guys don't understand the concept of DJing. DJing, you can, when you make a mix, it's not really like you're copying it, you're playing it, but you're mixing it in a different form and you're adding other elements, and you might be more creative where you can make it sound completely different than what is the original. So you're not just playing the song. So a lot of times, a lot of like, Congress that passed a lot of the copyright laws. And remember, the Copyright Act was of 1976. So we're dealing with very archaic concepts. So
Yep.
in 1976, there wasn't DJing like there is now. So a lot of those concepts are hard to transfer over to 2020, where, the copyright law
Well,
doesn't
here,
match
here,
with what's going on right now as far as DJing.
and when people signed contracts back then, there was no digital at the time. So there
Right.
was, there's that. So that was in itself was not, and honestly, the record labels were getting away with that shit. They were
Yeah,
getting, oh yeah, we're selling it on digital, but guess what? You didn't have a digital contract with the artists, so they were getting away with murder on with money
right.
on that. So I mean,
The sound recording copyright, the synchronization licensing for it to be played like on multimedia, social media and internet, basically Spotify and all that kind of stuff.
right,
Yeah, you're right, because in 1976 that didn't exist. That had to be amended because of the digital millennial copyright.
right, and and I talked to many artists when they came out with the vinyl and then DJ International Records and stuff like that. There was no digital aspect of it, and all of a sudden now, and then I think one of the guys that I had talked to, he was telling me that 1 million units, digitally wise, and he's like, I didn't get any of that, and it's just
Mhm.
really, and of course he feels kind of jaded about it, and I could
Right.
understand that as well.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you got BMI and ASCAP coming into the play as
Yeah,
well. So
yeah, because they got to collect royalties for the copyright owner. Yeah,
yeah,
so
so,
it's a very complicated
and that's
business.
almost like a mafia in a sense, because that now you got them coming in and knocking on the doors of all the venues and say, hey, you got to pay this or else, and
Right.
then here I am as a DJ, a promoter, and all of a sudden, the owners are looking at me and says, hey, what's up with this BMI and ASCAP? And I go, well,
Right.
and mind you, I'm DJing there on a Friday and Saturday, and we're like, wait, you play music here 7 days a week. I'm just here for that, that 5 hours.
Right.
They're looking at you play music on a continuous basis. It doesn't matter if you're playing it on the radio, if I'm DJing it, or if you do the math on it. I says, I'm 1/10 of your music. I go, the rest of it is all you, which guy says, so
Right.
I says, if you're gonna, you got to tell them what you're going to pay and how, they're looking
Yeah.
for something. Everybody's looking for a payday, and that's what it is. And that's the unfortunate part about it, because then, then you got some venues that don't want to, they don't want to hire a DJ. Then all of a sudden they're like, oh
Mhm.
man, we got to get this PPA license. We got to get this
Yeah.
license. We got,
Yes.
so those are some of the, you know, I
Yeah,
guess,
because it's the public performance license, to be able to play those tracks, because that's how technically the copyright owner gets royalties. Because let's face it, I mean, there isn't vinyl selling anymore like it used to, and we don't have CDs that are selling anymore. So it's kind of like, how does that record label or the copyright owner, because it could be the record label that has the copyright to that song, how do they collect the royalties now, or how do they make revenue off of it? Where back then it was vinyl, it was units, it was CDs,
so
it was
so
vinyl. Now it's downloads, now it's
so,
streaming.
so
Even
now,
downloads are
well, I was
vinyl.
gonna say, so now that all this, and because of the pandemic happening, and I'm gonna fast forward a little bit here, with the live streaming now. What's your take on everything now? Because if you ever hear me tell the story, the reason why I decided to do the show, because I got frustrated with Facebook cutting me off all the time. I did it for 2 weeks, and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do. I love DJing. I want people to hear me DJing, but live
Right.
streaming got a little frustrating. And then they talk about the algorithms and all this stuff. I'm like, oh my god.
Mhm.
So, what is your take on all this?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked me that question, because I did do like a live PowerPoint presentation on copyright law for DJs and social media. It's still on my page actually at El Caveman. Just
Okay.
scroll down to all my videos, it's there. But my take on it is yes, it all goes back to copyright law. The problem that is going on with Facebook and why DJs are getting cut off, and I try to explain it to a lot of DJs in the forum and in my presentation, It's because Facebook doesn't have these sync licenses yet, so they can be able to pay off, like say BMI, ASCAP, Sound Exchange, the big three, as far as Sony Music, you know, and all those big labels, to pay those royalties. The problem is that the royalties are not being paid off. So that's why Facebook is not letting us, stream the music. Of course, they can't catch everybody. So there's gonna be some DJs that they're gonna stream with no problems. There's some that get cut off. So the more popular the song is, the more commercial it is, more likely than not, it's gonna get flagged right away by the algorithms. So really, the problem that is going on is that Facebook hasn't worked out that sync license with all these with RIA, with BMI, ASCAP, CSAC, all these Sound Exchange, because those royalties have to be paid off somehow, and that's the problem, that there isn't. Once Facebook does that, then we would be able to do it. I think Mixcloud Live now has something where they worked out a sync license where now you can stream there and they're not going to cut you off. But therein lies the problem. A lot of us DJs want to go on Facebook Live because there's where all the masses are, and Facebook hasn't done it. I mean, my suggestion is this for Facebook. I mean, then if I think what is going on is that Facebook doesn't want to charge its users. They have all these years they haven't charged their users. The only time that they charge revenue to their users is just like if you do like a Facebook ad or something, then you pay
Right,
some
right,
revenue.
right, right.
But it always avoided having to ask the regular people that are not DJs, non-industry people, to say like, all right, pay us a $10 subscription to log on to Facebook, because they know that people will leave. But my suggestion would be this: create something for DJs and artists where we could stream live and you charge us a basic flat fee like every month, and
Right,
then use
right,
that money
right.
to pay off, these royalties. And then that way you could offset Facebook costs, and these labels or copyright owners will be able to collect royalties. And then that way they could have those sync licenses.
Right.
So, but just keep in mind that it's just not the United States. We're dealing with the whole
I
world.
know, I know,
So
I
every
know.
country,
That's
every
that's
country has their own copyright laws, and some of them are not part of the European Union. So for Facebook to figure all that out with all these countries, it's just logistically, it's
it's
a
a
drag.
headache.
Yeah. So what they do is they just cut us off. What they do is, like, if they just have this algorithm and they're saying, okay, that this song is being flagged, so we're not going to let you stream it.
I
And where that comes in is through this the Safe Harbor Act. So what they're trying to do is that way they don't Facebook doesn't get dinged by RIA, copyright holders, BMI, ASCAP, Sound Exchange. So that way they don't get hit, because Facebook can use the Safe Harbor Act and say, hey, we have the platform here. We cannot control what our users are doing, but if they stream infringing stuff, we're just gonna cut their podcast, or we're just gonna mute the songs.
right,
So
right, right.
that's kind of like the way that's why we're getting muted, and that's
So
why.
So I guess the obvious question, and I guess other DJs are going to ask this question: how are the other DJs getting away with it? Because there are DJs that are doing it and live stream for an hour and a half. How is it? How is that? I mean,
Yeah, that's a good question. I wish we knew somebody from Facebook, that works for Facebook, that could answer that question for us. And we're going to have to subpoena someone from there. That way they can explain it to us. But my take on it is this: I think that there's a lot of DJs that get away with it, quote unquote, because Facebook can't police everyone. I know that there's an algorithm out there, but they use an algorithm to flag these songs. But you know, it just could be luck. It could be that they're some of the songs are not that popular where they just don't get flagged right away. I've noticed even when I DJ, like if I play a lot of the Latin house stuff, the newer tracks, and they're kind of they're a little bit more on the underground side, so those really don't pop out. But if I do a retro mix, it's gonna get flagged right away. If I do an alternative mix, it's gonna be flagged right away. But if I do like, you know, tracks that I made or tracks that my buddies made and that are unreleased projects, more likely than not, they don't get flagged. But you're
No,
right. There's some people that do get flagged.
no, the CZR was doing his live stream and he got flagged for his own song.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Because and that's the other thing too. I mean, because again, it's an algorithm. So the algorithm doesn't know if the copyright holder is playing his own song, you
right,
know. So that's number one. And then a lot of those songs that CZR did, they are copywritten. They are owned by International House Records or whatever other record label. And so depending how the contract is, that label is the copyright holder in some cases. I mean, I got to see his contracts, but I mean, let's assume that.
no, it was one of his tracks he made. He owned everything, and it was I remember he posted it. He's like, "Dude, I'm the artist. I'm the one who did it. This is my
Right,
label.
right,
This is my like."
right.
So
No, and I did have a conversation about that with him. Yeah, because I mean, again, you could produce a track, but you could make a track, you could do the whole thing, but it doesn't mean you own the copyright. You still have to file you still have to file your copyright application in the U.S. Copyright Office.
right,
So sometimes what happens is, assuming it's one of his earlier tracks, he might have signed with some label and said, okay, well, I'll sign for this label, give me that advance, but the record label owns that copyright, or
right,
it might be, but I'm just, I'll take CZR words for it that he filed his own copyright, he owns his own copyright. I just think it's just the algorithm. They don't know who's playing. They can't. They don't know that the CZR is the guy that made that track,
right,
and he's
right.
playing his own stuff. So that's why he has to contest it. Then once he contests it, then it'll get cleared and blah blah. But that's the whole point. We don't want to be interrupted in a live stream, and that's what happened to Caesar. I think he also said that it happened to him when he was live streaming on YouTube, and YouTube does do that. For some reason, if you're streaming live and it flags a song that is copyrighted, it'll stop the stream or mute it, and it'll send you like a email saying that whether this is your material or not. And I think he contested that one, as far as YouTube. So YouTube does that too. Now, the way to go around that is not to stream on YouTube live. Make your mix, make your video, and then upload it, and
Right,
then
right, right,
YouTube,
right.
YouTube will find out who it is, and then it'll put like the names and record labels that you used on that song, like by itself. Like I thought it was, I did it by accident again. I uploaded one of my old mixes, and sure enough, like all the names of all my tracks started appearing, and I was like, wow, like this is cool. I didn't know YouTube does that. So I think that's one way to go around it. But the problem is that it's not live.
Right,
So
I know, that's why honestly, that's why I did the show,
uh,
because I got frustrated with the live streaming, and honestly, if you know me, I'm the guy who wants people to come to the venue to hear me mix and stuff like that. But I mean, I guess that's going to be always the discussion about what's happening in Facebook now, and things have to change and stuff like that. I think that's a conversation that needs to be brought up and talked about more. Just because like you said, they're ancient. The way
ancient
that,
concepts, yeah.
right. So that what's we're gonna. Um, so let's go back to, you said about 2005 to what happens between that year
Okay.
2005 to now. What let's say, or
Yeah, like so I mean, from all that time, from the mid 2000s till now, I just started playing like at a lot of different events, a lot of one-time kind of guest spots at places, and uh, what really started taking off was the actual festivals I was getting booked at.
okay,
The first ones that I was getting booked at, obviously, was House of Soul. When it first started, I was getting booked at those, like, what was that, like mid 2000s, like 2007, somewhere around there. And then from there, I think Carlos Cool Cut, he then became in charge of the House of Soul. And then I think I played for him a couple of times for
You
House of
talking about
Soul.
Carlos Vasquez, right?
Yes, Carlos Vasquez.
Yeah.
Because before there was like a different Pilsen committee, and that was handling that. But then Carlos started working with one of those committee members until he was basically the guy in charge with the House of Soul from
Okay.
the middle or late 2000s. So I started doing some guest spots at the House of Soul, which was awesome, obviously, for many reasons, because it's Pilsen, and again, from the middle 2000s, I always advocated playing newer music. I always wanted to play new music. I wasn't really trying to do the retro stuff because in Chicago there's a lot of DJs that do the retro stuff. A lot of DJs do freestyle, old school house, high energy, and I just wanted to play the newer tracks, because as a DJ I just wanted to play that music. So I got booked at the House of Soul. I also got booked at Underground Elements for their showcase, their house music showcase festival at what do you call it, at St. Richard's. And then I got booked to play in Millennium Park because there was a time period where correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a time period where there were no more house events at Millennium Park. They stopped doing them like in the middle 2000s or late 2000s because there was I'm over here forgetting the name of it, but it was what do you call it? They used to have like Lego and
You talk about Summer Dance?
Summer Dance. Yes.
Okay.
I don't know why my mind went blank, but thank you. Yes, Summer Dance. So for many years, Summer Dance was very popular, right? There was a lot of people that would go, and then I think 2007 or 2008 it just stopped because there was like a fight or something, and then the city didn't want to throw those events anymore, and there was no more house music like in Millennium Park or Grant Park. So like in 2010, there was the Viva Chicago Festival, and I
Correct.
happened to get asked to play at that. And then and I was asked, and I was like, well, because the person that was in charge of it at the time, her name was Yesenia, and she worked for the city of Chicago, and she was planning that event, or she had something to do with that event. And then she's like, I would like to book you for the city of Chicago for the Chicago Latin Musical Festival, at Grant Park, at Millennium Park, and I was like, wow, I would love to play. And I'm like, but do you know what I play? And then she's like, yeah, I know you play house music, but you play Latin house. She's like, if you could play Latin house for the Viva Chicago Latin Fest, that would be awesome, and I'll put you on the card. And so she did, and I played and this was like after they stopped doing the summer dance, because there was like a couple of years where they stopped doing summer dance. I don't know, I can't peg the year, but I know it was before 2010. For like a brief period of time, there was the summer dance wasn't being thrown anymore. So this was an opportunity to have DJs like play at Millennium Park again, but it wasn't summer dance. It was just a different festival. And so I did. So I played at the Chicago Latin Music Fest. And I think I was in one tent, and there was like different tents. And I think the main stage had like Cristian Castro or something, and different artists. And
Hey, so I think Summer Dance stopped after 2001. I think that's what happened because 2002, I think it was a 2 or 3 year period.
yes,
And that was because of 9/11. If you remember, 9/11
Yeah.
happened in 2001.
yes,
So the city of Chicago, just like what's going on pandemic wise and stuff like that, city of Chicago, because of a terrorist attack. So
Right.
that's why they stopped doing that summer dance, because they were afraid that anybody could do something downtown. So just like
Right.
what's happening with festivals this year,
Right.
because
Right.
of the pandemic,
Mass
and
hysteria.
it just it's the reaction to what happened in 2000. That happened in 2001. So that's why summer dance.
Okay, okay. Thank you for explaining it to me, because I remember something happened that summer dance wasn't being. So I was worried about playing at Millennium Park because I'm like, nobody's gonna go. I was thinking because it's not summer dance, or they haven't had summer dance for such a long time, and they haven't had DJs, so I don't know how it's gonna do. And but sure enough, it was a great event. A lot of people showed up, you know,
Yep.
and it was just an awesome experience to mix at the Chicago Latin Music Fest, in Grant Park, in Millennium Park. I mean, so I started playing. So I played there. I played at the other festivals going on. I played at the Via Palooza Festival for a couple of years. I think like for 4 years straight. I played for what other events were going on at the time? A lot of the house music block party that was thrown by Underground Elements. Um, just every year was more festivals, and I just kept playing at those type of events or festivals. Like it was like the summer festivals were very plentiful. I think I closed out the Michelada Fest like 2 years ago, I think, in Pilsen. I played there. Um, wow, I mean, I'm just forgetting. My mind is just racing, but I played at a couple of festivals. Also, the smaller festival, Danny Palooza, I played at that one. That's in Little Village. Um, and then just other bookings, just like at in Pilsen, like Harvey in Pilsen, Twisted Cantina in Pilsen, the Labor Day weekend festival that they would be throwing at I think it was Alex Latin House was throwing those events. Just so all that time I was playing at a lot of these festivals, a lot of these summer festivals.
So this
And
summer for you was really fucked up, right?
pretty much, I mean, mostly everything got canceled, and well, everything got canceled. Not mostly everything, everything got canceled. But if there's any consolation, I'm gonna play for House of Soul, but we're gonna stream live. So
Okay.
we're gonna take our precautions, with our masks, social distancing. So we're gonna do a virtual festival from July. What is it? The 29th all the way to August 2nd.
Okay.
Uh,
So,
so
so I was going to ask you. So, did you see the event that I'm going to be doing July 12th for the silent picnic that I'm
oh
doing?
yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
So that so
that way social distancing. Yeah,
yes. So we're calling it social responsible now. Because I mean, honestly, because of everything that's going on, we know we have to be social distancing, but I think it's important that we be social responsible with people now, because
yes,
let's be honest with you, I don't want to respike,
right.
any problems that are happening. We're watching the news now.
And liability purposes. Knock on
Yeah,
wood. You
you
don't want.
know. I mean, but you just don't want to get anybody else sick as well, and
Mm,
it's just unfortunate that people, and I get, okay, so obviously you deal with a different demographic than I do, but also I deal with a different age demographic as well.
mm,
I've been doing this for, for 40 plus years. And so my clientele is, let's be honest with you, they're 40 plus, years old. And some of
mm,
my followers are in their 60s and 70s. And so I
mm,
have to be extra careful with that, because I don't want to be, any responsibility of, I don't want, God forbid that, I'm responsible personally for getting someone sick.
right.
That's what I look at. I think as like you getting booked for all your festivals and stuff like that, you want the promoter, you want the guy who's organizing the festivals to make sure that everybody's safe there, so they have the
Mhm,
security, they got the proper ways to run a festival. And of
mhm,
course, if a festival organizer isn't taking care of those responsibilities, you're gonna, you wouldn't work for
mhm,
that festival person again, right? so,
mhm.
so
Yeah,
this
no, that's very true. And it's just that we just got to be careful because we don't. There isn't a cure yet. So until there's a cure or a way to like handle, I guess, to treat patients with COVID-19, I mean, this is just the new reality that we have. And unfortunately, I don't mean to be a Donnie Downer, but I just feel that this is not the first time we're gonna have like a shutdown. I think there's in the future there might be another pandemic, you know, and there might be other where we might have to do this again or a second wave, you know. So
So we
I
don't,
hope.
yeah, we don't know what's gonna happen September, October with this, you know, we don't know if this is going to subside, if this is going to, you know, is going to, you know, I mean, God willing that this thing was, that the virus has its time and is gone and it goes, you know, and it goes, you
Right.
know, it evolves and whatever is gonna happen. You
Mhm.
know, I know that. Um, is, we're coming up to, we're almost coming up to an hour and a half. Anything you want to say to the people who, you, that logged in, or anything that you want to say in closing?
Yes, unfortunately, I just couldn't see the comments because I was so into the,
I
making
know,
sure that, Zoom is working and stuff like that. But and everybody that tuned in to I guess hear my story, thank you. I'm very humbled, about it because it's not very often that I get asked, like, hey, describe your life or describe, why you got into DJing or why you do DJing, and I'll answer it right now. I love DJing. I love playing. I just love playing for you guys, and I love playing new music for you guys. I like breaking new tracks. I like working on music myself. But I think I love DJing more than producing, to be honest with you, because producing, you don't really see the crowd, but when you're DJing, you feel that energy, you feel that crowd, you see the crowd, and that's what it's all about. And I love it. I mean, that's the only reason why I keep doing it. I'll do it until I can't do it no more, but what do you call it? It's a passion of mine. I really love playing my music, playing for you guys. I love doing the live streams. The other thing too I haven't said in this interview is that the live stream thing just kind of took off by itself because the first week of the COVID, I mean, I really rarely go on live and just stream.
Right.
Like I just didn't want my stuff out there like too much, I kind of wanted to do it once in a great while. But the first week of the COVID shutdown, I decided to go on just for the hell of it. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to log on and I'm just going to put on the camera. I'm going to play and see what happens. The first time I played during the first week of the shutdown, I had like 250 people like log in like that, like, viewing my live stream. And I was like, wow. And I was playing like nothing but new tracks, nothing but Latin house. I wasn't playing the familiar, classics. Nothing wrong with it. I love classics too. Don't beat me up on it. Anybody that is out there. But I was just surprised that people, were still listening to me playing like these newer tracks and these Latin house tracks. And yeah, so that I think on my first stream I had a good like 5,000 to 6,000 people to tune into me, and I didn't promote it. I didn't announce it. I just turned on my my cell phone, and I just didn't have any cameras yet. I just plugged it into my phone, and I had all those viewers. So from there on, I was like, well, you know what? Let me stream every week. Let me try to do this, and see what happens. And sure enough, every week or almost every week, I've been streaming live. It's been a great positive feedback so far that I received on it. The other thing too is that it kind of forces you as a DJ to be more creative, because if you're streaming every week, you kind of have to dig in the crates, the proverbial crates, sort of speak, because you don't want to play the same stuff. So you kind of want to do something different, or grab those tracks that you haven't played yet, or that not too many people know about, or different remixes, or different genres. Sometimes I've done a classic 90s techno mix. I did a retro 80s, kind of like an MTV type of, flashback type of deal. I did just the pure Latin house type of set. So like it kind of forces me to play different stuff, even Latin. I even did like a Latin open format mix in one of my streams, and I went from reggaeton to cumbia to mumbatan to like, so it was like I never played reggaeton ever, or cumbias ever, like in a live stream, like ever. And it kind of forced me to do that and go through a multi-genre open format mix, and it was fun. I mean, it was fun to like play stuff that I normally don't play,
Right.
and for there to be an audience, because when you're streaming live, you're not afraid of people leaving the dance floor. You know, you're kind of like, you know, you're people are listening to you. If they're listening to you, they are, but they're gonna tune into you, and they're listening to you, kind of take them in this different journey. Or sometimes you're not worried about losing this dance floor. You know, you just people are just tuning into you because they're like, wow,
Right.
okay, let me check out this Caveman open format mix that I never heard him play open format. Let me check it out. You know, so it's been great. I mean, now that everything's opening up little by little, we're in phase 4. I'm not sure how if people are still going to stick around for these live streams. I mean, only time will tell, you know, to see how how
That's
we
what,
have it, because not everybody's forced to be inside the house anymore. So
well,
we have a,
that's what, one of the guys had posted. He goes, what's, does this mean that, because obviously, when I, even with the show, I've talked to people and it says, yeah, how long, I'm doing this every day, 8 o'clock. But the question is, well, how long are you gonna keep this up? Every day, 8 o'clock, because I have a captive audience at this point. But who knows what happens after July, I think July 6th, I think this is when so I mean, I have my bookings all the way to July, almost into July. I got my bookings of DJs. And I don't know what's going to happen with the show. I don't know if this is going to be, if that's it. I like this. I like the format. I like talking
yeah,
to
this is awesome.
as far as the people's interviews and stuff like that. And there's plenty of people to talk to. Trust me, there's plenty of people. I can book, 365 people. I could. They're just, and I'm not just interviewing DJs. I'm doing, producers. I'm DJ. I'm interviewing dancers. I'm interviewing club owners, and all across everybody in the music industry. But again, it goes back to the whole thing about, I don't know how this is going to, what is the answer, because there's still a lot of unknowns. We
Yeah,
don't know if this,
only time will tell.
yeah, and we don't know if this is just temporary. It's nice outside. People are going outside. Us doing this picnic, if that means it's going to happen one time and that's it, never happen again. And we don't know and then the big question is what happens after, winter time, fall and winter. How do,
Right.
if I think I just
There's a
seen
lot of unknowns.
the news saying 25% capacity. How can a business survive at 25%?
That's
This,
the unfortunate thing. I mean, and I kind of been talking about that here and there, like posting on other people's comments and stuff like that. That is what worries me is really the economy, because I mean, if a business is operating only on 25% capacity, I mean, it's like how does that business survive? You know, so it's going to be hard for small businesses, or especially mom and pop businesses, to really survive, because I mean, we have the pandemic has been for a while, the shutdown has been for a while, so that kind of affects. It's like, rent is still due, these mortgages are still due, payments are still due. So if there isn't any income stream coming in, it's kind of
and
hard to.
and the scary part, and honestly, the most scary part is if a second wave comes in. Let's say if, God forbid it, if there is,
Mhm.
festivals are not going to be able to do anything next year.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just
yeah.
going to be
it'll,
like,
it'll, it'll be
they're
like
going
a
to,
two year thing with no festivals, I mean.
right, right.
And maybe if that happens, people might be appreciative, more appreciative towards festivals in year 3. They're going to be like,
Well,
wow,
that's,
we have.
but you said it, but with the 2 years that they stopped the summer dance, when they decided to do it again, everybody they just jumped
Yeah,
on it. So,
yeah, yeah.
so
So
I
I'm
don't know if
foreseeing
there's a pro and a con to it all.
like everything in life. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Thank you very much, Caveman.
Thanks,
And
man. Thanks for having me.
thank you, and stay online, guys. Thank you for joining in. Don't forget, we do this every day at 8 o'clock. Thank you. Appreciate it.